So after all these small gigs, Chris, the sort of first of the real big time gigs was the Inverness Rock Festival, is that right?
Yeah, that's right, Chester. We were still a trio at that point. But we'd been in London. We'd got the deal for the first album with a publishing company called Campbell Kennelly. Very old school publishing company, Denmark Street. Denmark Street is Tin Pan Alley. And a very old school CEO called Roy Berry. And the way that all came about was interesting because back in the day, most of the bands who were trying to kind of make it would approach a record company, make some demos and approach a record company. And I had this little beam up on it that the way of actually getting there might be through songwriting. So I started to check out publishers, publishing companies rather than record companies. I remember going into Cutherson's music shop just off Sucky Hall Street where Leslie Harvey worked, and going through the sheet music. He gave me some of the actual sheet music that was out at the time, finding a company like Feldman's, Campbell Kennelly. Feldman's actually did the British side of Bob Dylan's publishing, again old school Tin Pan Alley. So when we had done some demos, I got a photograph of the band, just a little photograph of the three of us in surrounded by trees, very, Sylvian, and with the long hair, etc. And sent it off. No tape, just someone saying we'll be in London over the next week or so, and if you're interested, phone this number. And we immediately got a response from Campbell Kennelly, from this guy Roy Berry. It turned out that Roy Berry had actually lost patience with the people under him. He just felt that they weren't in touch with the music business. In fact, they were much more in touch with the fact that Campbell Kennelly had nothing to do with the music business as constituted in the late 1960s than Roy Berry realised. Anyway, Roy Berry phoned us up, and they phoned me up, and he said, look, yeah, you're coming down, that's great. Come to the door after 5 o'clock and just ask for me, sort of thing. I thought, this is strange. Anyway, we went down to Campbell Kennelly, and we'd also got a meeting with Feldman's across the road. And long story short, we finished up with 3 offers of deals around that time. One from a company called Sonnet, who worked with Dave Cousins, and also from Feldman's. They were interested in the band, and thirdly from Campbell Kennelly, and they said they would do a deal with CBS. They were starting their own label, and if we signed with them, then the album would come out through CBS, which turned out not to be the case. But we made the album and then fell out with them because there was absolutely nothing happening. There was nothing happening in promotion or anything else, and they threw me a copy of the White Book one day and said, go find yourself a manager.
On that first album, did you guys play on it, or was it session guys?
I was the only one of the 3 of us who played. The rest, Pauline and John didn't come down until the backtracks were done. So I played in all of them, and there was a lot of session guys. Glenn Coutinho, Harold McNair, Herbie Flowers, the usual suspects that played back in those days. And they knew what they were doing, and it was, so for of its type, it was a good album, if you like that kind of thing. But going back to the manager, we managed to find a manager called Chris Pears, and it was he who got us the gig at the Inverness Rock Festival. He opened more doors for us in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks than had happened in the previous 2 or 3 years. And when they gave me the White Book that day, they said, get yourself a manager. And I just kept phoning around people. I just basically cold called them until I found somebody who was willing to listen. And Chris Pears had been Peter Sarstedt's manager. He had also been co-founder of Island, but he'd fallen out with his partner on Island because he wanted to bring Peter Sarstedt to the label. And his partner was not happy about this, and so Pears decided to branch out on his own. So he gave Sarstedt his basement flat, and then they got another record deal and got brought out Where'd You Go to My Lovely, which was a big success. But there was no follow-up to it. Sarstedt was much more like a one-trick pony. So it was this point we came into his life, and he said, well, can you play me your songs? I said, yeah, great, we've got the PA in the van. So we brought up our small PA and put it in his front room in the West End of London, and did a gig for him, you know. And he said, "That's great. I really like the band, and I'll listen to the album." So he signed us up and got us the gig in the Inverness Rock Festival.
I mean, that was the front of the NME, I think, weren't you?
Bizarrely, it was the front of the NME. I think we were on the front page with the Kinks, who were playing in Poland. And you go look, Chester. You can research it. But we were, and there was some other band that were playing in, you know, a Marmalade or something like that were playing elsewhere. And somebody, I think from, am I right? I think it was Woodstock. Maybe I'm wrong. But there was a kind of collage of bands, the Beach Boys, the Kinks, and Stringer and Thing playing at Inverness. It was weird.
Of course, there's the famous story that the weather wasn't particularly wonderful prior to your set,
Indeed.
and but things sort of changed.
You're talking about the miracle of
The
Inverness.
miracle of Inverness.
Yeah, courtesy of our main man, John Mannion. So John, basically, when we got on stage, we were doing our usual thing. You know, we did some covers, our own versions of some Dylan numbers, etc. You know, and some of our own stuff. And then John surprised me by saying to the crowd, right, because it was raining and it wasn't all that pleasant. And John said, "Right, we're going to do Let the Sun Shine In, you know, from here. And if you all clap your hands and sing along, then the rain will stop." I thought, what in God's name is he doing? That's some sort of claim to make, you know. So I'm kind of nudging him in the back, but you know, John was impervious to all that. He was a man on a mission. So off we went in a song which I think we'd only ever done a couple of times. God knows why we had done it. Let the Sun Shine In. Of course, the clouds broke. The sun came out and shone directly on Mr. Mannion, and he was beaming, standing there like something out of what you call it, a Fellini movie. It was surreal, to say the least. And somebody came up and handed him a bottle of whiskey, and he demolished part of that. And we were there. Somebody came up and said later, "You're certainly the heaviest two-guitar tambourine band I've ever seen in my life."